First encounter in the Crystal Forest. Greg Phelps hadn't expected his routine exploration mission on EA7 to feel like stepping into a dream. Twin moons cast an ethereal purple glow over a forest of crystalline trees, each one refracting the alien starlight into shards of color. Snow-like mineral dust swirled around his boots as he moved his black combat armor, reflecting the light in sharp, cold glints. Frost was beginning to collect in his beard and mustache, but after 6 years of deep space missions, Greg barely noticed. "Control, this is Scout Leader Phelps," he murmured into his comm. "Sector 7 appears clear, moving to complete the final sweep before nightfall." Captain Sterling's voice came back through the static. "Copy that, Phelps. Keep your eyes open." Sensors picked up unusual energy signatures in that area. Greg kept walking, his boots crunching over the mineral crust. He was about to report another all clear when movement caught his eye. In a small clearing framed by glowing bioluminescent foliage stood something out of a fairy tale, a horse-like creature with pale blue skin and a flowing dark blue mane that shimmered under the moonlight. Its eyes were intelligent, almost unsettlingly, so as if it were appraising him. "Well, I'll be damned," Greg whispered, raising his scanner. The readings spiked wildly, nothing like any fauna logged for this planet. The creature turned its head toward him, and then in one liquid motion its body began to shift, bones, skin, and form flowing like molten silver. Greg froze, watching as the alien horse dissolved into something humanoid, tall and slender, with skin the same shimmering blue and hair that cascaded down like a midnight waterfall. The woman stood with a poise that was both regal and wild. She wore nothing at all until a flick of her fingers summoned a gown of pure light that wrapped around her form. "Well," she said, her voice melodic and faintly amused, "this is rather awkward." Greg kept his weapon lowered, though his instincts stayed sharp. "That's an understatement. I'm Greg Phelps, Scout Leader from the ISS Hyperion, and you are Princess Ariana of the Equinox Realm," she replied without hesitation. "Though I suspect that means little to you." "You'd be right," Greg said, eyes narrowing slightly. "What I'm more interested in is how you speak English, and why you were masquerading as a horse." Ariana smiled faintly, though her eyes held a shadow of something darker. "Your language was simple enough to learn through our observation systems. As for my other form, that's a longer story. It involves political intrigue, a vengeful sorcerer, and a transformation spell gone wrong." Greg exhaled slowly, realizing his mission had just taken a very sharp turn away from routine. "The princess's exile." Before Greg could ask more, static hissed through his comm. He tapped the side of his helmet. "Control, this is Phelps. I've made contact with a local dignitary, requesting backup and diplomatic protocol activation." No reply. Ariana's voice came softly, almost sympathetic. "Your communications won't work here. The crystalline formations in this region create interference fields. It's why I chose this place for my exile." Greg's brow furrowed. "Exile, I thought you said you were a princess." "The two aren't mutually exclusive," she replied, bitterness curling at the edges of her tone. "My younger brother saw to that, with help from our court sorcerer. The spell was meant to trap me in my Eowyn form forever. I've only recently learned how to break free." Temporarily, a high-pitched whine cut through the air, and Greg's HUD lit up with multiple red energy signatures. "We've got company," he warned, raising his rifle. Ariana's eyes hardened. "The sorcerer's constructs. They found me again." Her hands began to glow, threads of blue energy weaving between her fingers. Through the trees, mechanical predators emerged, sleek chrome-plated beasts with glowing red eyes and claws like razor wire. "Any chance these things are friendly?" Greg asked dryly. "About as friendly as my brother on Coronation Day," Ariana replied, moving into position beside him. Right then, Greg said, charging his weapon, "Let's show them why you don't mess with a human and a princess." The first construct lunged. Greg rolled aside, squeezing off 3 precise shots that punched smoking holes in its armor. But it kept coming. They're protected by enchanted alloys. Ariana called out her movements fluid and deadly as she cast a burst of crystal magic that encased another construct mid-leap. Greg ducked behind a crystal pillar, eyes flicking between his weapon and the advancing enemies. "Regular fire won't cut it, huh? Then let's try something irregular." He pulled an experimental EMP grenade from his belt. "Hey, princess, does magic play nice with electromagnetic pulses?" Ariana's lips curved into a smile. "It creates quite a spectacular reaction. Allow me." She wrapped his grenade in a cocoon of glowing energy just before he hurled it into the cluster of charging constructs. The detonation was unlike anything Greg had ever seen, a swirling vortex where tech and magic collided, sending the machines flying in a storm of crackling light. When the last one fell silent, Greg stepped out from cover, grinning. "Now that's what I call teamwork." Ariana's eyes sparkled. "You humans are remarkably adaptable. Most species panic when they see magic." Greg shrugged, the adrenaline still sharp in his veins. "We've learned to roll with the punches, but I have to admit this is a first even for me." The Grove of Unity, the distant howl of more constructs, rolled through the crystalline forest. Ariana's expression tightened. "My brother must be getting desperate if he's sending so many after me." Greg checked his rifle's charge. "Then maybe it's time we had a proper conversation somewhere more defensible." "There is a place," Ariana said slowly. "A sacred grove protected by ancient wards. The constructs can't enter it." She hesitated, her eyes holding a glimmer of amusement. "But I should warn you, it is considered intimate, traditionally used for certain rituals and ceremonies." Greg raised an eyebrow. "What kind of rituals?" A mysterious smile curved her lips. "The kind that forge bonds between souls. Are you sure you want to know more, Scout Leader Phelps?" His pulse ticked up. "Lead the way, Your Highness." They moved together through the glowing forest moonlight, gleaming off Ariana's flowing gown. Greg caught himself staring at the way her movements flowed like liquid starlight, at the way her dress shifted to reveal glimpses of her pale blue skin. "You're staring," she said without turning. "Can you blame me?" he replied. "This isn't what I expected to find on a planetary survey." "And what did you expect?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. "Mineral deposits. Maybe a few interesting plants." He smiled faintly. "Definitely not an exiled shapeshifting princess who can throw magic around like it's nothing." Ariana's expression softened. "My people have a saying, the most precious gems are found in the most unexpected caves." They stepped into a clearing, and Greg stopped dead in his tracks. Towering crystal formations rose from the ground like nature's own cathedral, each one pulsing with soft, multicolored light. The air was warmer here, filled with floating orbs of luminescent magic that drifted lazily, casting a gentle glow across everything they touched. "Welcome," Ariana said, spreading her arms to the Grove of Unity. "For countless generations, my people have come here to forge their deepest connections." Greg watched one of the glowing orbs land on his armor before floating away. "It's beautiful, but won't your brother find us?" "The Grove's protections are absolute," she assured him, moving toward a particularly large crystal spire. "No magic or technology meant to harm can pass through." She turned to face him, her expression shifting to something almost vulnerable. "There's something you should know about this place, Greg, about my people's biology and our magic." "I'm listening," he said, noticing how the magical lights pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "We are empathic beings. We form deep connections through emotional and magical bonds. This grove amplifies those connections. It's why it's used for our most sacred ceremonies." Greg felt the warmth of the grove seep through even his armor. "And you brought me here because..." Ariana stepped closer, her voice soft but certain. "Because I felt something during our fight, something rare. The way we moved together, how our abilities complemented each other perfectly. My people would call it compatibility." The bond forged. Greg absorbed her words, his tactical instincts wrestling with something deeper, something instinctive. "That's why your brother exiled you, isn't it? Not just to take your throne. He wanted to stop you from finding a true bond." Ariana's eyes widened slightly. "You understand quickly for an outsider. Among my people, a ruler who forms such a bond becomes nearly impossible to overthrow. The shared strength, the combined power." She trailed off, glancing away. "My brother feared I would find my match before he secured his claim." She turned back to him, her gaze locking onto his. "Now I think I understand why the universe brought you here." Her hand hovered just above his chest plate, not quite touching. "Your species has a reputation. Greg humans, the indomitable warriors who refuse to bow, who face impossible odds with a smile and a quip, who forge their own destiny." Greg gave a small crooked smile. "We're stubborn that way." "More than stubborn," she said, her voice taking on an almost reverent tone. "You're magnificent, adaptable, creative. You blend technology and instinct as if it's second nature. Among my people we would call you starborn, those whose spirits burn as bright as suns." Her hand finally rested against his armor. The touch sent a jolt through him, not electricity but something more primal. He pulled off one armored glove and raised his hand to her face. Her skin was warm and impossibly smooth. "This is crazy," he murmured. "We barely know each other, don't we?" She countered softly. "Tell me you didn't feel it when we fought together. Tell me you don't feel it now." He couldn't. The connection between them was undeniable, humming through the air like a live wire. It wasn't just physical. It was ancient, powerful, and utterly beyond human understanding. Outside the grove, the distant sounds of mechanical howls carried on the wind. "Your brother's forces are still out there," Greg said, though his other hand found her waist almost without thought. "Let them come," Ariana whispered, leaning closer. "Your tactics, my magic, my knowledge of this world, your human ingenuity, we'd be unstoppable." Her smile was equal parts seductive and challenging. "Unless you're afraid." Greg laughed, a deep, genuine sound. "Afraid, princess? I'm human. We eat impossible for breakfast." "Prove it," she said, her voice low and teasing. The crystals surrounding them began to pulse brighter, as if sensing what was about to happen. The air thickened with magic, and something else, an emotional current that pulled them together. Greg closed the last inch of distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that made the entire grove hum in resonance. In that moment, the bond between them flared to life, unmistakable, unbreakable. The grove's awakening. The kiss deepened, and with it, the magic in the grove seemed to surge. Crystals glowed brighter, their colors shifting in waves that matched the rhythm of their heartbeats. The floating lights swirled around them like a living constellation drawn to the energy building between the two. Ariana's hands slid up Greg's chest, the heat of her touch sinking through the seams in his armor. Her form shimmered, flickering between her humanoid and Eoin aspects in a display that was both mesmerizing and strangely natural. Greg didn't flinch. He only pulled her closer. "Most species find our shifting unsettling," she murmured against his lips. "But you..." "Beauty is beauty," Greg said, brushing a thumb along her jawline. "No matter the form." Ariana's eyes shone with something equal parts desire and wonder. "You're changing everything, Greg. The magic." She broke off with a soft gasp as his fingers traced along her spine. "It's never responded like this before." The air around them vibrated with harmonious sound, as though the grove itself was singing. Crystals sprouted new formations before their eyes, their growth fed by the swirling current of magic and emotion. Greg could truly feel her not just in the heat of her skin, but in the shared current that ran between their minds. Every flicker of her breath, every swell of her heartbeat echoed in his own body. This, Ariana whispered, is what my people call soul bonding. It links us on every level, body, mind, and spirit. The magic intensified, wrapping them in a cocoon of light. Her dark blue hair floated as if caught in a celestial tide curling around them both. Their connection deepened until the line between where one ended and the other began dissolved completely. And then, with a final surge of shared energy, the grove erupted in a cascade of color and sound. New crystal spires burst from the ground, each one glowing with the signature of their combined essence. When the light finally faded, they stood together in the grove's center, still holding each other, the air warm with lingering magic. Ariana's voice was almost reverent when she spoke. The bond is complete. Greg exhaled slowly, the weight and wonder of the moment settling over him. Someday, what happens now? Her answer was a soft, knowing smile. Now everything changes. Flight from the grove. A low tremor rippled through the ground, making the crystal spires around them chime in dissonance. Ariana's head snapped toward the grove's edge. The barrier is weakening. My brother's forces are trying to break through. Greg's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his rifle, checking the charge. Time to move. What's the fastest way out? A mischievous light sparked in her eyes. Mount up! Before he could respond, her form shimmered and elongated limbs reshaping with liquid grace, until the sleek, powerful body of her Eowyn aspect stood before him, pale blue hide, gleaming dark blue mane, flowing like a river of starlight, hooves glowing faintly with stored magic. Greg didn't hesitate. He swung into the saddle-like curve of her back, the connection between them flaring to life through the bond. The grove's shimmering barrier shattered with a sound like breaking glass. A dozen chrome-plated constructs charged in claws, sparking against the crystal ground. Hold tight! Ariana's voice rang in his mind, threaded with exhilaration. She exploded into motion. Her hooves barely touched the crystal floor before launching into a gallop so smooth and fast, Greg had to remind himself to breathe. Magic flared with every stride, scattering the mineral dust in glowing arcs. The constructs gave chase, but Ariana's speed was unreal, her movements a blur of muscle and magic perfectly in sync with Greg's balance. She leapt over a jagged crystal ridge, landing on a narrow bridge of solid light that formed beneath her hoofs just in time. Greg glanced back. They're struggling to keep up. Then let's make it harder, Ariana replied, vaulting over a chasm and weaving through towering crystal columns like a dancer on a battlefield. Behind them, the constructs stumbled their rigid programming, unable to anticipate such unpredictable movement. The twin moons lit the path ahead, their silvery glow refracting in dazzling patterns off Ariana's mane and the crystalline terrain. Greg grinned despite himself. Your brother's toys aren't as graceful as you. Her laughter echoed in his mind. Most beings aren't, especially when they're chasing a human's chaos. They burst free of the grove's perimeter, the vast alien landscape opening before them. Endless crystal plains, knife-edged ridges, and shadowed valleys. Freedom lay ahead, but Greg knew the hunt wasn't over. Still, with Ariana's raw speed beneath him, and their bond thrumming like a shared heartbeat, he felt something rare in the middle of a pursuit by lethal machines. Hope. The adaptive hunters, the crystalline plains blurred beneath them, Ariana's hoofs striking sparks of magic against the ground. For a while the constructs faded from view. Then Greg felt it a prickle at the back of his neck, the soldier's instinct that meant trouble incoming. They're back, he muttered, scanning the horizon. From the jagged ridges ahead, new shapes emerged, sleek liquid metal forms that shifted and rippled as they moved. These weren't the same chrome beasts from before. They flowed like living mercury, adapting their shapes mid-stride claws, becoming blades' legs, lengthening for sudden bursts of speed. Ariana's voice rang sharp in his mind. Adaptive hunters, my brother's elite models. They learn as they chase. They're herding us, Greg realized, watching the way they angled their pursuit, closing escape routes one by one. Then we show them what happens when you corner an Equinox princess and her human mate Ariana, replied, her mental tone dripping with defiance. Without warning, she veered toward a sheer crystal wall, her hoofs finding impossible purchase as she began running vertically. Magic flared around them, anchoring her steps to the slick, glowing surface. Greg leaned forward, their bond syncing his weight perfectly with her balance. The hunters scrambled after them, their liquid forms stretching to mimic her climb, but they lacked her precision. Humans, Ariana broadcast to their pursuers, her mental voice rich with pride, are wonderfully unpredictable, and I've learned to embrace that chaos. At the cliff's edge, she gathered herself and leapt. For a heartbeat, they hung suspended between the twin moons, their shadows merging on the ground far below. A volley of quantum-locked nets fired upward from the hunters' threads of energy that should have been unavoidable until Ariana shifted mid-air, her body becoming momentarily incorporeal. The nets passed through her, as if she were mist. Greg laughed aloud as they landed in a spray of mineral dust. That's new. The pregnancy, she said, speeding across a field of singing crystals. It's enhancing my abilities. They wove through a maze of spires, forcing the hunters to split up. But Greg could see it. They were learning, tightening their maneuvers, closing in again. They're adapting fast, he warned. Then we get creative, Ariana replied. She reared up, striking a massive crystal with her hoofs. Instead of shattering it, began to sing a deep resonant tone that vibrated through the ground. Other crystals joined the chorus, the frequency growing until the hunters faltered, their liquid forms rippling in disarray. Ariana bolted past them, her voice tinged with triumph. The frequency of new life disrupts their quantum coherence. Our child just helped protect us. Greg grinned fiercely, pressing a quick kiss to the side of her neck. You're brilliant. And you, she replied, are going to owe me for that compliment later. The nullifier. They had barely cleared the last field of singing crystals when the air ahead seemed to ripple like heat haze. Out of the distortion stepped a single figure, larger, more imposing than any hunter they had faced before. Its surface shifted constantly, flowing between solid crystal-like armor and liquid metal, absorbing the ambient magic from the environment. Even at a distance, Greg felt their bond weaken, as though something was leeching the connection out of the air. Ariana slowed, her muscles coiled and tense beneath him. The nullifier, she said grimly. My brother's masterpiece, built to erase Equinox magic at the source. Greg studied the creature's movements, noting the deliberate precision, the way it pivoted to block every possible escape path. You're saying we can't fight it head on? Not with magic, she confirmed. Its very presence disrupts my abilities. Greg's mind shifted gears. Then we don't fight it the way it expects. The nullifier launched a probing strike, its form stretching like liquid quicksilver toward them. Ariana sidestepped, hooves sparking as she pivoted away. Greg's grin was sharp. Your brother made one critical mistake. He designed it to counter you, not us. Understanding flashed through their bond, followed by a pulse of admiration. My clever human, Ariana murmured in his mind. They charged straight at the nullifier, a move so reckless it caused the creature to hesitate. At the last possible moment, Ariana shifted partially between her humanoid and Aeoin forms, creating a cascade of unstable magical energy. The nullifier, programmed to absorb magic, focused on the bait. Greg seized the opening, With perfect timing, he hurled the enchanted knife they had carried since the grove, a blade infused with Ariana's magic and his own precision engineering. It struck the nullifier at a vulnerable joint, bypassing its adaptive defenses. The effect was immediate. The creature's liquid form began to crystallize from the inside out, freezing in place as the quantum field collapsed. Within seconds, it stood motionless, a towering, beautiful sculpture of alien crystal, harmless and inert. Ariana galloped past, her voice thick with satisfaction. "Remind me to thank you properly for that knife." "I'll hold you to that," Greg replied, one hand brushing her flank as the bond between them surged with shared triumph. "But let's get clear before your brother sends another surprise." Always so practical, she teased, though her pace quickened. The open plains ahead shimmered under the twin moons, the distant outline of their destination, just barely visible. The nullifier was behind them, frozen and defeated, but the game was far from over. The Prince's Gambit. The crystal city of Crystal Haven rose before them like a cathedral carved from light itself, its spires catching the twin moon's glow and scattering it into 1,000 colors. Greg and Ariana kept to the shadows of a resonating crystal grove at the city's edge, scanning the perimeter. "Security's tighter than I expected," Greg murmured, visor displaying patrol patterns. Ariana's pale blue skin seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, her long dark hair drifting on invisible currents of magic. "The magical signatures are wrong," she said quietly, narrowing her eyes. "My brother's here." Greg tensed. Here. Why would he risk showing himself? Because, dear sister, came a smooth voice from behind them. "Some things are worth the risk." They spun around to see Prince Aldrich stepping from a shimmering portal flanked by a dozen elite Equinox warriors. Unlike the mechanical constructs, these soldiers shifted between humanoid and Eoin aspects, with seamless grace, their movements disciplined and predatory. "Brother," Ariana said, her voice flat. Through their bond, Greg could feel her swirl of emotions: anger, wariness, curiosity. Aldrich's gaze moved between them, lingering on Ariana's abdomen before flicking to Greg with a measuring look. "When my advisors first detected the unique magical signature, I didn't believe it possible. A human Equinox hybrid." His tone carried equal parts fascination and satisfaction. "Our ancestors would be scandalized." "They were scandalized by a lot of things," Ariana shot back, "including your claim to the throne." Aldrich's faint smile didn't waver. But that's where you're wrong. I never truly wanted a throne. I wanted to protect our people from what I saw coming. The dilution of our bloodline, the loss of our sacred abilities." Greg's jaw tightened. "Your pure bloodline couldn't even catch us. It took human ingenuity and Equinox magic together to do what neither could alone." "Exactly," Aldrich said, eyes gleaming. Ariana stiffened. "You planned this. The exile, the transformation spell, all of it." "I needed proof," Aldrich admitted. "Proof that our species could combine with another to create something stronger. But it had to happen naturally. No forced pairing. And who better to test that than my strong-willed sister? And a human known for adaptability." Realization cut through Greg like a blade. The hunters. They weren't just trying to capture us. They were testing us, testing how we work together. "And you exceeded every expectation," Aldrich said. "Your child represents not the weakening of our heritage, but its evolution. Human determination and creativity fused with our magic. A future where our people do not shrink into isolation, but rise through union with the stars." Ariana's hand drifted protectively over her abdomen, the bond pulsing with both caution and a spark of hope. "Why the deception? Why not tell me outright? Would you have believed me?" Aldrich asked softly. "Would you have accepted an arranged match? No. It had to be real." He looked at Greg, genuine respect in his gaze. And what could be more real than a human who sees beauty in every form you take? A new beginning. Greg kept his stance wary, scanning the warriors flanking Aldrich, but Ariana didn't move to fight. Through their bond, he felt her conflicting emotions, mistrust wrestling with the faintest thread of belief. "So what now?" Greg asked. "Now," Aldrich said, spreading his hands, "you return home as heroes. The first of a new age for our people. Your child will be celebrated, not shunned. And you human will be recognized as a prince consort of the Equinox realm." Just like that, Ariana's voice was skeptical. Aldrich gave a faint, knowing smile. "There will be dissent, of course, but when they see the recordings..." He gestured, and a holographic display shimmered into being, showing Greg and Ariana's escape, her magic weaving with his tactics, the perfect synchrony of their movements, the impossible victories they'd carved together. "You've already started a movement. Other species are asking for cultural exchanges. The Galactic Council is paying attention." Greg glanced at Ariana, and through the bond he felt her surprise, her guarded hope. "And you're just letting us go. You're family now," Aldrich said simply. "You're free to come and go as you please." His eyes softened, just slightly. "But I do expect you at the naming ceremony for my future niece or nephew." Joy burst through Ariana's side of the bond, warm and bright as she shifted partially into her Eowyn form and nuzzled Greg's neck in front of everyone. "What do you say, my love? Ready to scandalize a few more ancestors?" Greg turned to her, drinking in the sight of her pale blue skin, shimmering with their shared magic. Dark blue hair floating like it was caught in a celestial breeze. The strength in her gaze that had first caught his attention. "Sweetheart," he said with a grin, pulling her into a kiss that made the surrounding crystals hum. "I think we're just getting started." The twin moons of Year 7 aligned above them, their light spilling across the crystal city in a rare conjunction that Equinox legends spoke of as a blessing. The warriors stood silent, the tension melting into something like respect. In that moment, Greg knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about rewriting the future, not just for them, but for two civilizations. And as for what happens when one human meets one alien princess, sometimes it changes the course of galactic history.